Hey folks, welcome back. In this video, we're going to take our second look at coloring, and we're going to look specifically at adding highlights and shadows and adding more visual interest. So this is 2 in a 3-part series. The first video, if you haven't already watched it, is where I discuss my approach to digital coloring, as well as placing flat colors. We call them color flats, and I share some techniques on how to do that. So in this video, we're going to take that one level up by establishing a clear light source for this composition, adding an element of narrative, and just generally making this illustration have more depth and visual interest. So the first thing I want to do is I want to consider the composition and what the story is that's being told. So in the last video, I just basically stopped it at roughly around this point. I added a few little tweaks here and there in terms of modifying some of the colors, but more or less it's just color flats. But we have our character looking off to the right. Her sidekick is also looking off to our right. And what are they looking at? So the first thing we want to do is we want to maybe consider for a moment the story that's being told here. So let's add some lighting effects. Maybe there's an eerie glow. And I'll turn off my cursor there. And so this glow is going to be the thing that our characters are looking at. It gives some strength to the composition. It also pulls the viewer towards the right. There's something mysterious that's happening there. What is it? That's the question that this particular illustration will hope to raise. Once we've done that, based on the way I've added some hatching to this drawing, my light source is going to be coming from our left-hand side. And what I've done off camera is take all of the layers for the astronaut and her companion, and I've merged them into one. We're going to use this merged layer as the basis for deriving our highlights and our shadows using the Freeform Lasso tool. So let me demonstrate. So I'll start off by establishing that I want the helmet to be receiving light on the left-hand side. So if I hit the L key for the lasso tool and I want to switch to the regular lasso tool, then what I can do is on that merged color flat layer, I can say, okay, well, this side is going to receive light. So I'm making a selection. I'm hitting Command J and I'm hitting Command U and I'm making it light. Now, I can do that particular technique, and I will, but there's also other ways of establishing highlights too. For example, if I select the bear and select a lighter value, I can always draw that in with a brush, right? So you have a couple of different approaches. I'll mix and match between the two, but the important thing is I'm going to extract all of my highlights onto their own layer. So this area right here would receive some light. Anything that is kind of left facing will receive some light. So Command J, Command U. Her face, anything to our left, will receive some light, so go back, Command J, Command U. And we're going to rinse and repeat that process for all of the areas that are going to reflect light. So imagine the light is coming from this side over here and shining towards our character. Now, is this going to be a scientifically accurate coloring thing? Probably not. But is it going to be believable? That's my hope, that it's believable. So I'm adding all of my highlights in. Maybe there are going to be some highlights that are going to be on these ridges over here. So I'll just paint those in. All right, maybe on the side of the bear. Command J, Command U, adjust the lightness, and so on and so forth. So now what we're going to do is we're going to now think about where the light doesn't directly hit. So some of that is already articulated by way of where I've got my shading. So again, going back to the base layer, Command J, Command U, make that a bit dark, and then use the brush to go ahead and fill in areas. Let's go ahead and group all of our highlights together first. I'll just hit Shift and select all the highlight layers and hit Command G. And I'll just call this highlights. And then now let's go back and get all of our shaded areas here too. So this area here might be shaded. This part of the helmet will definitely be shaded. This part of the gun, or whatever she's got over here, is going to be also shaded. So I'm making that darker. Command J, Command U. Sample the color, and you can fill that in. I find this to be a quicker way of working. I'm not saying you have to do this, but I'm just saying that this is what works for me. So your mileage may vary. So I've got my highlights. Let's add some shading to our bear. Command J, Command U. And let's see. We also have these corrugated pipes here. And what I'll do is I'll just indicate some areas where there's going to be some shading. Command J. Just to give a little bit more dimension between some of these pipes. So I'm just painting those in. I'll group those in. I'll call that shading. Now that I've done that, well, there's still a little bit more shading here. Maybe I'm a little bit premature on this, but I want to also make this part a little bit darker. And let's add some shading on this side as well. Command J, Command U. And let's move that into the shading layer. So we're just trying to stay as organized as we can so that we can easily find stuff. Okay, now that I've established that, I want to now think about reflectivity of material. Like there's going to be some material here that's shiny. There's going to be some material here that's going to be more dull. What do I need to convey here? So on a new layer above my highlights, I'll just call this shine. I'll pick a white color and I'll add some highlights that will help convey this idea that something is shiny. Not everything is going to be shiny, but metallic objects are going to be much more reflective and they'll catch some of that light. And this is a great way to convey material through color. Something else that we can also add here too, so that's shine. I'm going to make a new layer above my inks layer and zoom in a little bit and add a little bit of shine on the pupils. Just gives that a little bit more life too. And I'm doing that in a layer above my inks layer because if I moved it below, then you wouldn't really be able to see, especially that other dot that's in our other pupil there. So now let's see how the environment can support that light source. So we're coloring and adding shading to our character to imply that there's a light source coming from our left. Let's now move down and let's affect the environment a little bit. So we'll take our polygon lasso tool and let's just say the light source is kind of bleeding in this direction. do it like that. Made a selection, Command J, Command U. And we've got some light. Let's take a look at the grayscale and see what that looks like. Command Y. We talked about this in the previous video, and I've got a link to the grayscale approach for checking your colors and checking your values. So once again, our focus is on our main character. We have some visual interest on the right-hand side, and we've got some depth. We've got, you know, foreground, midground, background through our colors. We've got a clear focal point, which is our main character. So we are looking pretty good on that front. Now we can also come back here too and add some shadows, maybe underneath the screwdriver, underneath the oven mitt. I call it an oven mitt, space mitt, whatever, to give some of those elements a little bit more depth. Now we also have to think about cast shadows too. So if we have a light source here, you know, maybe we won't necessarily, maybe the lighting is not so intense as that we see, you know, any significant shadows, but we can also add those in. We can take our lasso tool and just generally kind of block, you know, where the arm is here. Command J, Command U, to suggest that the arm is in front of that beam. Those are all things that are going to go ahead and bring more depth to this composition. So I'm going to leave it at that for this particular video. In the next video, we're going to look at some really cool techniques to add lighting effects, glowing effects, all of that good stuff. So stay tuned for that. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next video.